following video is brought to you by the Boston Sports Entertainment Network. Please consider liking and subscribing for more Boston sports content.
I got the Boston Celtics going to the finals. I got them winning without.
It's time to represent your city. Put your hands up. Cali, you know we do it for Boston. Hey, ain't nobody gonna like Boston. Yeah, hey. Ain't nobody do it like Boston. Where the legends get made, where the banners get raised, bright lights, big stage. Boston. All the fire we bring in a city full of rings, it's a beautiful thing out in Boston. And you ain't hard like that, you don't put it on the line with your squad like that. That's right, Boston. All we do is win like cigars in the gym, and we at it again. I say, Beantown, what's up? What's up? 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 Feel the energy shift, now we jumping at the gym. Represent, showing out how we ball above the rim. Larry Legend, 86, to the truth in 08. Cement your name with the all-time greats. Still banner 18 in the Raptors. Celtic green, only green that matters. It's about that time. Ain't another city that's louder than mine. Always gonna shine with the game on the line. What you think was gonna happen, man? That's how we do it in Boston. Ain't nobody gonna like Boston. Yeah. Ain't nobody do it like Boston.
What's going on, everybody? It's the Dynasty Proud podcast brought to you by BSEN. I'm Ryan at 19_loading on Twitter. Cam Manning is here coming at you on this Thursday, May 29th, 2025. The Boston Celtics have obviously been eliminated from the NBA playoffs. The Oklahoma City Thunder are going to the NBA Finals, and the Indiana Pacers hold a 3-1 lead over the New York Knicks right now in the Eastern Conference Finals. And we might get the answer tonight as far as who is going to be facing OKC. So if Indy can pull it off, we'll have our matchup. If the Knicks can take this one on the road, they will keep playing, and we'll see what happens from there. I think I know who we on this podcast want to win, but Cam, I guess I'll throw it to you first. How are you, and who you got tonight?
Ryan, I'm good. Last time we were doing this pod together, Jason Tatum had just ruptured his Achilles, and then we wrapped the podcast, and our tremendous outro of them winning the championship last year brought literal tears to my eyes when we were signing off last time, just because, again, we were talking about last time how we have to bask in the glory of reaching the mountaintop when Tatum and Brown did it last year. No longer this year, obviously, but I'm doing good. I've taken a couple of days to myself, reprieved, got myself back mentally after that devastating series loss. But I mean, the playoffs, the Eastern Conference Finals and Western Conference Finals have certainly lived up to the hype and certainly played out pretty well. I, like many others, thought it was really funny. I went on Twitter the other day, and someone last year, I think, tweeted out about how Indy was so competitive with us in the Eastern Conference Finals. Even though we swept them, every single game was really close, and people were really undermining the Indiana Pacers. And now you get to see them in full flight. I mean, they just dominate in transition. Tyrese Halliburton just shoving his nuts in Madison Square Garden's face, saying, overrate what? Overrate that sort of thing. It's been really awesome basketball watching him orchestrate an offense. I mean, the dude had a triple-double with no turnovers last game. Just so dominant. And the Knicks just don't have an answer in transition. Their transition defense hasn't been really great. And then, obviously, Oklahoma City, historic team in the regular season, just keeps showing why they are the dominant force in which they are, beating Minnesota in 5 games. It'd be interesting to see how Minnesota approaches their offseason now, because obviously Anthony Edwards ascending into the prime of his career. They don't really have a number 2 option around him, like a clear-cut. Mike Conley's really old. Julius Randle's okay. When that trade first happened, I thought Knicks got the better offensive player, but Minnesota got tougher in that sense. And Rudy Gobert obviously is a great defensive player, but he's not a number 2 scoring option. So it would definitely be interesting to see how they approach the offseason. And we'll see how the series kind of continues tonight. Will it be Indiana making the Knicks cave in and on Madison Square Garden court, or will the Knicks demonstrate their Game 6 performance against the Celtics and kind of build off of that Madison Square Garden crowd and force a Game 6 of their own in this series? It'll be interesting to see. But the playoffs have certainly it's less stressful as a Celtics fan, knowing that like, okay, it's over, no more stress. But like, it's just been nice to sit back and watch some playoff basketball. So, what are your thoughts on the series as they transpired so far?
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing that keeps popping into my head is just, could the Celtics be beating this Pacers team? If we could go back in time and alter the NBA timeline and say the Celtics close out those 2 games against New York in game 1 and game 2 instead of, blowing 20-point leads. And then obviously if we could repair Jason Tatum's Achilles, somehow, if we could take all that away and go back and say, let's just say for the sake of argument that the Celtics found a way to win that series and don't lose their best player, what does that series look like? Because it's right now, the Knicks are kind of getting their butts kicked by the Pacers, and it just doesn't feel right. It feels like it should be Celtics Pacers in the conference finals right now, and it's not. And I just find that that's really disappointing because I want my team to be in it and they're not. My personal opinion, to answer my own question, I do think that the Celtics should be able to beat the Pacers if they had their whole team and none of what we just saw happened. And I think it would be leading into the matchup in the finals that everybody wanted, which was, the Celtics against the Thunder. And it would be, I think, one of the highest rated finals in a long time. The Celtics would be on the brink of going back to back and facing the MVP of the league and the rising star and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on the other side. So I'm just thinking about what could have been. That's really my only watching this entire playoffs. I'm like, this could have gone so much better.
It could have gone so. It literally couldn't have gotten any worse for the Celtics if you think about it. Maybe if Jaylen Brown got a significant injury in Game 6, that would be like ultra bad news. But I to have a little bit of a silver lining, I really loved watching Celtics legend Aaron Nesmith drop a career high in Game 1 in Madison Square Garden. That was really cool to see. When they drafted him, I don't think they utilized him very well when they drafted him. They didn't give him enough playing time or room for growth, but he's really ascended on a very good Pacers team. And he's a dog defender, dude. Picking up Brunson 94 feet from the basket, making life difficult. Yeah, Brunson's going to make his shots, but Nesmith's on him like white on rice, dude. Like that guy is picking Brunson up full court and making his life a living hell, or making it tougher than it needs to be. And the Pacers are doing a great job on the scouting report and actually abusing Brunson on the defensive switches, which has been noticeable throughout the series. They've been picking on him on the defensive side of the ball, which is usually what good teams do. They find your weak link, and as great of an offensive maestro as Jalen Brunson is, he's not an all-NBA defender by any means. His height certainly doesn't help him, but you can't help but reminisce on what could have been for the Celtics-Pacers series. It would have been must-see TV after what happened last year. Pacers probably come in with some vengeance if they see the Celtics on the calendar. Same spot as last year. But I wish I could change it. I can't. And it'll be really nice to see Tyrese Halliburton have a game of his life and eliminate the Knicks on Madison Square Garden court. I mean, again, they did it last year. They beat him in 7 games in Game 7 on Madison Square Garden to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals to play the Celtics. So Pacers low-key have been in the thorn in the Knicks' side the past 2 or 3 years or so. I mean, the Knicks lost to Atlanta a couple of years back as well. So, I mean, house of horrors really for the Knicks on their home floor, it seems like.
Yeah, and just going back to the whole playoffs in general, I think it's just been disappointing to think about how the whole league has shaken out, because you had the Cleveland Cavaliers had that historic regular season. They go down early. The Lakers just traded for Luka Doncic. They go down early. The Bucks end up losing Damian Lillard and they go down early. The Nuggets gave
Steph too. Warriors lost Steph to that hamstring strain. That series could have been healthy. So
the Nuggets gave the Thunder a series, but they lost in 7. That's probably the best we've seen so far. The Warriors, as you just said, they got kind of worked by Minnesota after the Steph injury. And then Minnesota went on to go get worked themselves by OKC. So, I mean, if we could write the script for the playoffs, I just think we would have written it a lot differently. And
I
I
want to
don't
turn
think
injury sliders off. For
anybody who thinks that the NBA is in WWE territory in terms of sports entertainment, I think that this would be proof that it's not, because if you were to pick the two fan bases to head to the NBA Finals, I don't think you'd be picking Oklahoma City and Indiana. So
if it ended the way the NBA wanted, it would be Celtics Lakers in the finals, or Celtics.
I mean, that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted for sure, and I said that a long time ago. But as far as the Celtics, I think we kind of have to eulogize, as the headline for this podcast is, kind of have to eulogize the season. What went wrong, and why is it not the Celtics in this Eastern Conference Finals against Indiana?
I don't know. I feel we've talked about during the Orlando series about how Orlando forced them to make adjustments. And we were like, okay, the Celtics are finding ways to beat this team because Orlando is taking away what they do best, and that's make 3-point shots and the 3-point volume. I think they died by the fact that they didn't make adjustments in the Knicks series, right? Yep. You can say it's coaching, that Tibbs out-coached Mazzulla, or Mazzulla was stubborn in his ways. 3-point volume, Water was going to find this level. It never did. However, it's one thing it's a make or miss league. We all know that. The NBA, it's a make or miss league. But if you have the roster the Celtics had with all those weapons, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Drew Holiday, Peyton Pritchard just won 6th Man of the Year. You have to get paint touches. You have to score in the paint. That's what the Knicks did. That's how the Knicks exposed you, is that you didn't make your threes, and the Knicks outscored you heavily in the 2-point / restricted area. They outscored you down there. And I also think that the front court depth, because Kristaps Porzingis was not relied upon most of the year due to injury and the illness that he was dealing with that carried into the playoffs, the front court depth killed you. Knicks on the offensive glass were a force. Mitchell Robinson, as much as we make fun of him for his abysmal free throw shooting, he kept plays alive. Josh Hart kept plays alive. Karl-Anthony Towns kept plays alive. Second chance opportunities. You can't give professional basketball teams second and third looks to make shots, because they will not miss 3 in a row. They're professionals. They will make it. It burned you. And I think that's a major question heading into the offseason, which I know we'll get to. But if you were to ask me what went wrong with the Celtics, it's probably they rely on the 3-point shot too heavily. And granted, it works against the Hornets. It works against the Wizards. It works well when it works. When the shots go in, it's great. But when they don't, you have to make adjustments. You have to find ways to win games other than 3-point volume. And I think that's Mazzulla got a little too caught up in the analytics and thinking, okay, Water will find this level. If the shots fall in, we're not having this conversations. But if you think about it, it altered the Celtics season this year, and it alters the season next year. Because, to your point, Ryan, if we could go back into the series and change anything, if the Celtics are up 2-0 instead of down 0-2, do you think the rest of the series plays out how it did? If the Celtics if they win those games handily on Garden floor, make at least 5 or 6 more threes in those games. I know it's all hypothetical, but if we're talking about it from a hypothetical lens, do you think we're talking about Jason Tatum injury next year, how that impacts the team, the unraveling of which the team is going to go into because they have to get under the second apron, all these cap ramifications? Hell, they still be playing basketball right now. And it's just one of those things where it costs you. The 3-point volume costs you, and the lack of front court depth costs them. In my opinion, those were the 2 biggest reasons why they're no longer playing basketball, and we're having this conversation at this moment in time. So
I'm with you. The one thing I might point out, and this is just the way that I think, and I am not a medical doctor, as I've said on this podcast many times. There's a reason
yes.
I'm just some guy on Twitter. I tend to think that those non-contact type of injuries, when they happen, they're going to happen at some point. It's a matter of when. If your Achilles is loaded up in such a way that it's primed to snap like that, it's a matter of when, not if. And I think the same thing about the ACL and things like that. Like, I think guys that have those injuries often, like, sometimes it's just, yes, you stepped wrong and you were in the wrong place, and like, wrong place, wrong time. You put your foot on the floor the wrong way and something snaps. But the Achilles especially is just such a, it's such a weird thing. I'm not a doctor, so I can't act like I know any of this, but it's a working theory that I have that just, if it's going to happen, if that makes sense.
Right.
But it doesn't mean it had to happen right when it did.
Right.
And going back to game 1 and 2, I think you nailed it. I think they shot themselves in the foot by not adjusting in those first 2 games, and the hole ended up just being too big to dig themselves out. And as you're choking away 2 straight 20-point leads, I understand it took historic shooting droughts and then also some ridiculously good shooting by the Knicks in order to make it happen. I could have this wrong, but I'm remembering Mikal Bridges just hitting these stupid mid-range shots that are contested in game 2. And they just were absolute daggers, and the Knicks would still be down. They'd still be down 5 or 10, and it would feel like they were winning the game because you just knew how it was going to go. And
you can't leave out that OG Anunoby game in game 1. He went ridiculous in game 1. No
doubt. That's true. But as you said, the lack of adjustments was the biggest problem to me. And I like Joe Mazzulla. I'm biased as a Rhode Island native and a guy who watched Joe play in high school before he even went on to play for Bob Huggins at West Virginia. Like, I don't know him personally, but I know enough about him to say I like him as a human being, and I usually like him as a basketball coach. But in this series, I think he looked really bad. I think you needed timeouts. You needed shooters on the floor. You needed defensive adjustments. You needed a calming presence to kind of reset the general mood of the team. And Joe really didn't provide any of that. He stuck to his guns and relied on the analytics as far as the 3-point shots go. And that's the only way I can really think about it. I said this in real time. Like, you can go back to the previous episodes of the podcast. Like, how about you just throw in Baylor Shireman? Like, even if, do something, even if it's not correct, even if it turns out to be the wrong thing to have done, even if it's just for 5 minutes, just throw somebody in there, see if it gives them a spark. I don't see a reason not to do something like that. So that's really where I'm stuck. It's just like the things again, we're just 2 guys on Twitter and we're looking at it saying there are obvious things you could have done. So I can't imagine what those exit meetings must have been like for the Celtics too. It's just like, well, why didn't we do this?
Right. And we've talked about it numerous times in this podcast. It's like Sam Hauser's getting minutes, and Sam Hauser's great. But we talked about the upside of Baylor Shireman, how his ability to create off dribble and give defenses more of things to think about than Sam Hauser just picking and popping or coming off flare screens and just pulling up. I mean, I thought a couple of those plays in game 5 where Sam Hauser, I'm thinking of the plays where Sam Hauser came off a screen and 2 guys kind of swarmed him knowing he was going to shoot, and then someone ducked under the basket and Sam Hauser hit him on a cut. I think Drew Holiday and Derek White did that a couple of times in game 5, and that was really cool. But like, Baylor Shireman can actually dribble, create, playmaking ability is really good. Even to your point, Ryan, you don't have to give him 15 minutes in the game. Just like if you're struggling to make shots, give something to give him a shot of energy. He hits a couple of threes when the rest of the team can't make them. Like, why not? Maybe gives a spark. Like, you can't underestimate the energy that some guys bring. And he's a rookie. He's trying to prove himself in the playoff rotation. Like, he's going to put his balls out there. And I'm just thinking to myself, what does Sam Hauser bring that Baylor Shireman can't? You know what I mean? It's just like, I love Sam Hauser. I'm not trying to throw Sam Hauser under the bus or anything. I'm just speaking from what I've seen on the basketball court. And Baylor Shireman in the second half of the regular season, we talked about this. He had a lot of confidence in the second half of the year. Why not include him in the rotation? Even when you're up 20, just throw him in there. Just like see what he can do in limited minutes. I just don't understand. Like, I get playoff rotations tighten up because experience does matter and play a role. But to your point and my point, like if you're struggling and you want to do something that doesn't make sense, or you want to mix it up because things just aren't working, and all of a sudden you're down 2-0 instead of up 2-0, it's a big difference. Like you don't have a lot of room for error in the playoffs. It then snowballs and then it's too late. And next thing you know, your best player's on the shelf. And I'm not saying there's a direct correlation, but it's one of those things where you're talking about being up 2-0, going into Madison Square Garden, you win game 3, you're up 3-0, the Knicks don't have any life, and you're talking about a completely different series. But again, this is all hypothetical, but I just think the lack of adjustments needs to be talked about, especially with guys like Baylor Shireman and Sam Hauser in this sort of context.
Yeah. And obviously now they're paying for it. I mean, the season is over, and they're in the off season when they shouldn't be. And, speaking of Hauser, we can talk about players that kind of have to move and the turnover that has to happen with this roster. And I think Sam Hauser is one of those guys that we both expect to lose. His contract is pretty prohibitive. And then you're going to lose at least one of Porzingis or Holiday, if not both, unless something else crazy happens, which we can get into. There have been a lot of just kind of quote unquote reports swirling around with guys like Shams Charania of ESPN going on TV and acting like it's big news that the Celtics roster is going to have all these changes and that they have to make trades. And I think we were all kind of baffled by that in real time, because it's like, if you've been following, like, we've all known this for a while now. The team's been telling us this themselves. The question that arises is who's in play, who's off limits. What do you think they actually will do? And I know you want to get into some mock trades and stuff too, but for me, just the guys that I might be kind of spoiling it a little bit, but for me, the guys that are untouchable that I have on my list are Tatum, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, almost exclusively because of his contract. And then if you want to go this far down the bench, I know we're huge proponents of Baylor Shireman, but he's a guy that just because of his contract status and the fact that you're going to lose Hauser, you're probably not going to move off of him. And if you'll notice, I did not mention Jaylen Brown in that list. And I did notice that. I did notice that. I want to be really clear. I did that for dramatic effect. That does not mean that I want to trade Jaylen. I'm just saying that if some team out there wants to get really, really stupid, I think you have to consider it. But the problem with that, on the flip side, is that with Tatum having this injury, I think maybe we're all being a little bit naive to think he's absolutely, definitely going to be the exact same player when he gets back. And he's young, so I get why people say that he still has this long career ahead of him, and he'll be back and he'll be just as good. He may be. That might not be untrue. But if you're the general manager, if you're the president of basketball operations, if you're the owner of this team, you also have to consider the worst case scenario, which would be you bank on Tatum coming back and try to build something new by trading Jaylen for younger guys or a really high pick or something like that. And then Tatum comes back and he's not the same. And you're left holding the bag because now you don't have Brown. Tatum's not as good and he's still owed all that money. And you're in no man's land. And that's the glass half empty perspective. And like I said, I know Brad Stevens has to think about that side of it too. But I think it would take something completely insane in order to get Jaylen Brown off this team. Like if Mikal Bridges is worth 5 first-round picks, I don't even really want to know what it would take to move Jaylen Brown. So I think you can add Jaylen Brown to the untouchable list with an asterisk. And the asterisk would say, unless Nico Harrison calls.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great list. I am full on board with that. Jaylen Brown being moved is the last resort scenario for me personally, just because he you don't, it's kind of like, I'm not trying to cross sports or anything, but when Brad Marchand got traded this past trade deadline, everyone in the Boston sports media sphere flipped out. Every Boston sports fan was upset just because of the sentimental value that you gain as a fan for him being on the team for so long. Like, the city embraced Jaylen Brown. Like, he was the draft pick before Tatum, and he has just grown so much as not only a player, but an individual. And the Boston community has really embraced him. He's done a lot of great work in the city. And not to mention, he's turned into arguably a top 25, 30 player in the league, without a doubt. And we're not sitting here talking about this if he hadn't emerged as such a superstar player and given this team a championship. So it would be hard for me as a fan, not only as a fan, but someone who's like envisioning, if you're trying to open the title contention window for as long as possible, you can't do that without having Jaylen Brown on your team. I think that's just goes for me. I'm not sure every Celtics fan is universally locked in arms on that, but I did have a couple of mock trades. I'm not sure how we want to go about this. If you wanted to bring up your trade targets, or you want to hear the ones that I heard from NBC Sports Boston.
Let's go with yours, and then because it might overlap.
Yeah. True.
So, okay, if my thing happens to be included in your thing, great.
Okay. All right. So for context, this is not something I drew up. This is NBC Sports Boston. Chris Forsberg tweeted this out, or not tweeted, but Instagram reel, that there's 2 trades out there that he did. Do you want to hear the nuclear mega deal first, or do you want to hear the like less enticing but fills a need type deal first?
Yeah, let's do the reasonable one first.
Okay. So I'm going to give you the paraphrase version again. This is Chris Forsberg at NBC Sports Boston. Does great work around the team. Everyone there does great work. But this is the one that I see that's more likely a path and that I would really be happy about as a Celtics fan. So this one targets big man depth, and it says goodbye to Drew Holiday. Ready for this? So Drew Holiday has a $32.4 million cap hit. Funny you bring up Nico Harrison. You trade Drew Holiday to the Mavericks. You receive Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington, but you can't make the money work. These guys combined make more money than Drew Holiday. So you have to have a third team involved, like a Brooklyn or a Portland or someone that has a lot of cap flexibility. But the Mavericks receive Drew Holiday. The Celtics get Daniel Gafford or PJ Washington, and then they would have to transport a third team like a Brooklyn to absorb either Gafford or Washington's contract plus picks. So in this scenario, I probably preferably Gafford for me. I know PJ Washington's more of a 3-and-D shooter. Like, he can shoot the ball better than Gafford from the perimeter. But from a pure rebounding and rim protector standpoint, I prefer Gafford over Washington in that regard. So the full trade in its entirety is Drew Holiday, the Mavericks, Celtics get Gafford, Brooklyn gets PJ Washington and draft assets. And it does put the Celtics under the second apron, adds the front court depth, which I told you at the beginning is razor thin. It's why I think we lost, one of the reasons why we lost the Knicks series, because you have Luke Kornet as a free agent, Al Horford's a free agent, and obviously we're talking about moving Porzingis. So not a lot of big man depth there. So we address that need with Gafford, get under the apron. Mavericks get much needed backcourt depth with Kyrie Irving being out and defensive stud and Drew Holiday and championship pedigree. You have that. Now you have Drew Holiday, Klay Thompson, Anthony Davis to hold you down while Kyrie recovers, and Cooper Flagg, and if they hold on to the number 1 overall pick. So that's a good nucleus for the Dallas Mavericks. Really good nucleus. And Brooklyn, obviously, third team absorbs the money to accumulate draft capital, ammunition to make a trade. And the money does work out in that scenario, but I want to hear your thoughts on it.
The only thing I would look at is just from Dallas's perspective, and I know we make fun of Nico Harrison, but I don't think he's a complete idiot. Like, that's a lot of old guys with injury risk. And if you have Drew Holiday, and obviously Kyrie is coming off the injury, so he wouldn't be back immediately, but then you also have Anthony Davis, who you just don't know what you're going to get with him. Klay Thompson has had all these injuries, and he looked fine.
Didn't look like his old self, though.
He looked okay. But do you want to add Drew Holiday to that mix and get rid of one of your younger guys? And now it's just a whole bunch of old guys and Cooper Flagg. And that's it. Like, I don't know if I love that model. Now, the advantage of doing that is that later in Cooper Flagg's career, you might have a whole lot of max slots. because those old guys are going to be gone. So I see both sides of it.
And I also think you're forgetting that Derek Lively's also in the mix there. So you have
yeah,
Davis, Lively. You have Davis and Lively. You can have Flag come off the bench, maybe to just like, I don't know. Like there's a lot. They have a lot of front court depth. They have Lively, Gafford, and Washington. And they don't really have a good, like Max Christie's still pretty young coming off the bench. He's not like a starting 2 guard for you. So I'm just like kind of thinking in that perspective, they have assets to chip away in the front court, I would say. But to your point, though, they have got a lot of older guys on the team. So sorry to interrupt, but you were saying
no, you're fine. And then I just think, yeah, you're fine. And I think as far as the Lively thing goes, I just think, and I'm not going to pretend to have watched every Mavs game this year because I didn't, but it seemed to me that Lively took a little bit of a step back this year. And especially becomes a little bit less valuable without Luka Doncic there because he's such a great playmaker and Lively can just go up and get alley-oops. And if so much of the defense is focused on Luka, it's a lot easier for him. And I think there's added pressure on him when you don't have that threat of the offensive talent that Luka is. So.
Yeah, gotcha. All right. Well, that was my first one. So I like this. Hypothetically, if this were on the table, like if you're a Celtics fan, are you doing it? Are you doing this trade? The Drew Holiday, get Daniel Gafford, find a third team to absorb. Do you think Gafford's an attractive enough option to do it?
I don't hate it. It wouldn't be my first choice. I think if you can't find anything better for Drew, I think you do that deal because you need to get under the apron. Yeah. But I just think that's where I'm coming from.
Gotcha. All right. So I got a mega deal here. I got the nuclear deal. Now, we talk about it, Ryan, because it's very interesting because we talked about this before, the path that the Celtics can go, right? They can go tread water for a year while Jason Tatum gets healthy, kind of test experiment with some guys, or they could go the nuclear route, which is this is the one I told you about off air before the show where it got like 700 comments. Everyone's like, please get the microphone away from this guy. Please stop doing these trades. But I found it rather interesting. And I'm not saying this is gospel. I'm just throwing it out there because I want to get your viewpoint on it. All right. So this is the mega deal. Okay. This is the nuclear deal. And I'll give you the full explanation. You give me your thoughts. Okay. It does involve your protected with an asterisk guy, Jaylen Brown. The Celtics trade Jaylen Brown to the San Antonio Spurs. And in return, the Celtics get the number 2 overall pick, which has been rumored to be Dylan Harper out of Rutgers or Ace Bailey out of Rutgers. Either one of those guys. Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, and maybe Forsberg also chimed in and said the Spurs can sweeten the deal because they also have the 14th pick in this year's draft. Or they have the pick swap, which we got from the Derek White deal when we traded Romeo Langford. We traded a pick swap, Romeo Langford, Josh Richardson for Derek White. So the key basis of the deal will be the number 2 overall pick, Devin Vassell, and Keldon Johnson. The last 2 things I told were sweeteners that could spruce up the deal. And Jaylen Brown obviously has the most cap hit. That would just alleviate a bunch if we traded him in terms of pure money off the books. All right. So the Celtics, Forsberg also dropped in that explanation that the Celtics could add a third team to take on more salary in the deal to avoid repeat offender penalties, which I, again, not a salary cap expert, don't know what that entails. I'm not the owner of the team. I don't know. So in terms of why each team would do it, okay, Celtics go nuclear route. They get younger, cheaper assets. They get a prime prospect in Harper or Bailey. They get cheaper, younger talent in a proven commodity in Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson, who are good depth pieces. Why do the Spurs do it? Well, you add Jaylen Brown to Wemby and De'Aaron Fox. You got your big 3 in San Antonio that accelerates the rebuild. So not sure, like a third team would do it for draft picks. That's explanation's kind of obvious because the same kind of as the Drew Holiday one where a team would just take on salary, accumulate draft assets. But the main 2 teams would be the Celtics and Spurs making a deal. We talked about it earlier, about trading into the lottery. I had mentioned last podcast about Houston being a player in this as well, but San Antonio has the higher draft pick and a lot of salary space to absorb. So I'm just wondering your thoughts on this. So the full trade one more time. Spurs get Jaylen Brown. Celtics get number 2 overall, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson. That's it.
So I'm not an NBA draft expert.
Me neither.
So I don't know what the guys in the draft are going to turn into. And for that reason, I just think I prefer certainty a little bit. And you know what you have with Jaylen Brown. I don't know if that's enough to get me to do it. And I don't love Vassell and Johnson enough to say that's one I would absolutely do. That's just me.
Mm-hmm. I just okay, hypothetical. I know he's only played 1 year, but Stephon Castle, if he was included, if substitute him for Vassell or Johnson, either of your choice. So it would be number 2, Johnson or Vassell, and Steven Castle. Would that kind of move the needle, or is it still just unproven, not really enticing you enough to make the deal?
It might a little bit, but I also wonder if, our perspective of Castle might be a little bit skewed just by how bad the rest of the rookie class was. I don't think he would have been rookie of the year in other years. So if he was in the Cooper Flag class, obviously I think Cooper Flag is going to beat him out. So that's something I'm thinking about too.
Gotcha. Yeah, so those are the 2 proposals that NBC Sports Boston Chris Forsberg put out there. And again, these are not me playing mock GM or anything like that, because I just again, I've seen Bleacher Report do a couple where it's Porzingis to the Warriors and the Celtics get Moses Moody, Buddy Hield, and all these guys. So I don't do that because I don't know the salary ramifications, how the money all works. I'm not a cap expert by any means. These are just the 2 that I saw. I'm always enticed by seeing trade options. And I think, Ryan, you brought this up last week. I think it's going to be tweeted this out actually at 19_loading. Go follow him on Twitter. Great content on there. But you also tweeted out something that I really loved. I think it's going to be really fun to see Brad Stevens and how he fixed, it'll be fun to see him, how he does creatively, how he does with this roster coming up with the ramifications that are set in. So I think it will be really interesting to see. Those are just the 2 trades that stuck out to me. I know you also had a guy or multiple guys that looked enticing on your list. Looked enticing for you.
Yeah. The issue that I have, and it didn't overlap with my thing, which is great. The only other thing that I'm thinking about is that you have Luke Cornett's a free agent. Al Horford's a free agent. Porzingis is probably going to be traded. If for whatever reason Cornette and Horford are both out the door too, you don't have a center other than Neemias Queta. So the guy I'd be targeting, and again, I don't know how to make it work. I'm not a cap expert. I would just be looking at Walker Kessler. If you can get him out of Utah. So
I love that. Danny Ainge is over there. So a little Celtics Danny Ainge magic again. That'd be pretty cool. I know he's been rumored in the past to come here. I think during the trade deadline, it was rumored that the Celtics were interested in on him. I genuinely speaking, Ryan, I thought you were going to go Vucevic. I thought you were going to go Vucevic from Chicago, because I've also seen that rumored. And I'm interested in that too, just from the pure durability standpoint and the fact that he can stretch the floor. I love Walker Kessler. I think he's very underrated. I mean, obviously up there in blocks per game every year, ever since he entered the league. He's still on the younger side too, a lot of upside. And he solves your rebounding problem immediately as well, because the guy's just a glass eater, pure paint rim protector. I don't know how the money's going to work or what his contract status is, or if Utah even wants to part ways with him. But I am all in on Walker Kessler as well. I'm not sure. Do you have, because I was talking about this earlier with some buddies. Do you have a list of, because I know you mentioned the guys that are untouchable, so to speak, but your trade list, number 1, Zingis, number 2, Holiday, or is it interchangeable? You see them both gone?
I haven't really thought about it. I don't mind moving on from both of them. I just know you kind of need to do so much because of the cap implications. So I don't have a priority to make, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. I don't know off the top of my head, I don't know what Porzingis' cap hit is. I think they're both over 30 though. Drew and Porzingis are both over 30. But no, I love the Walker Kessler thing. I think it's just a necessity to get big men, especially to your point with Luke Cornett and Al Horford entering free agency. And as much as I would love Al Horford to come back, the guy's going to be 39 coming into next year, and you can't ask him to play 30 minutes a night. Like if he comes back, I want him coming off the bench, and I want him playing spot 20, 22 minutes a night. I don't want him playing heavy minutes during the regular season, because as much as Al Horford's heart is always there, the body does eventually age unless you're LeBron. Father Time does catch up. So, I mean, we saw it a couple points in the Knicks series. Al Horford and Drew Holiday looked their age. They looked older. They looked a little step slower, and the Knicks exposed that. But Al Horford's just a glue guy. I mean, we praise Al Horford a lot. We talk about it, right? Isaiah Thomas comes here. Isaiah Thomas and Al Horford aren't here without everything else that led up to it. And Al Horford was like the first big free agent in like the 2010s to come here because of Isaiah Thomas. And that kind of snowballed into Jaylen Brown getting drafted, Jason Tatum being here. And like, that's how the team kind of developed. So he's seen it all. He's been through it all with the Celtics organization. And I would love for nothing more for him to come back. But again, it has to be in a limited role. I don't see him playing big minutes next year or the year beyond that. Like, he's got to be 20 minutes maximum on a nightly basis. But the front court depth needs to be solved one way or the other. And I like that trade proposition, Walker Kessler.
And that's exactly why I think Kessler makes sense. Because then he's your number one. And if you still have Horford, you don't have to ask too much of him. And Kessler would only be making less than $5 million for next year. And then he would be an RFA after next year. So I just think it makes a lot of sense. And I hate to cut it short, but I do have to get out of here in a few minutes. And then we had a couple other things that we wanted to talk about, but I think, we're just heading toward the Celtics off season. So, and I'm a little bit shorter on time than I expected to be. But anyway, obviously with the Celtics out, we're not doing as many shows. We'll have more coming up, but we'll just be on a little bit less frequently. And we'll keep it updated as far as when we expect to do shows, whether it's every couple weeks or whatever we end up deciding. But unless you have anything else, I'll just go ahead and get us out of here. So just let me know. Just feel free to stop me if you got anything.
No, it was good following the Celtics playoff run with you, Ryan. It was great. Hopefully they'll come back stronger next year. I'm really excited for a silver lining of Brad Stevens and his creativity in solving the issues. Again, that's why I'm not a GM. That's why I'm not president of basketball ops. I'm just a co-host on a podcast who has a Twitter account. So it was great chatting with you about the Celtics playoff run, and we look forward to seeing how the team shapes up next year. Should be exciting.
Same here. Yep. I think we just about covered it. So we'll get out of here, like I said. So for Cam and myself, we will catch you next time.
Ends tonight here. It's over. Time to say it again, Boston. Anything's possible. Banner number 18 has been secured. The Celtics are NBA champions.